Hey, Tim Frisch with a Frisch Perspective here, your Christian nerd bringing you analysis, reviews, and fun. In my last video, I was comparing the CSB, Christian Standard Bible, with the New International Version, and I talked about 5 reasons why the CSB is better than the NIV, but I told those who like the NIV to have no fear, because in this video, I'm going to be giving 5 reasons why the NIV is better than the CSB. So I'm excited to get into this, and with these translation comparisons, I just want to say, as I've said before, this is not scientific and exhaustive. I'm not saying I have perfect knowledge of all these translations. I'm just trying to give a basic overview based on the knowledge that I have, general knowledge, and really to try to help people to be more understanding of the different translations that are out there and the different perspectives that are out there. We can tend to get really entrenched in our own points of view. So in doing these comparisons, I'm really trying to help people broaden their perspective and see things from different angles. So today I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why the NIV is better than the CSB. So the number 1 reason is that the NIV is groundbreaking and incredibly successful. I have to say, the NIV came out in the late 70s, early 80s, and for its time, it really was groundbreaking. I mean, the timing of it was incredible. It came on the scene when a lot of translations up to that point had been revisions of the King James Version or revisions of the King James Version. And there were some other translations out there, but the NIV was both scholarly and a new translation of the original languages. So it came on the scene at such an interesting time, and it was so successful. But with that success has breeded a lot of criticism. And I would say that one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that the NIV is criticized is because it is so successful. If people don't really use a translation, then people aren't going to know about it and they're not going to have negative things to say. But if a lot of people are using a translation and other people notice that, then they're more likely to criticize it. And I think that's what's happened to some degree with the NIV. Also the timing of it. As I said, it was a scholarly translation that was not in any way based on the King James Version. So that also made it a little bit of a target at the time and has continued. I live here in New England, and I can tell you that teams that have great success do breed different reactions. Success either breeds a lot of accolades or it breeds criticism and resentment. And so I do think the NIV has been incredibly successful, but I also think that has made it a little bit more of a target. That being said, you can't deny that if something's successful, there's probably something to it. So the NIV was groundbreaking, successful, and that is a great thing. Number 2, the NIV is better than the CSB in how ubiquitous it is. Now I know that's a big word, ubiquitous, but it means that it's everywhere. You see it all over the place. The NIV is used by a lot of different churches in a lot of different places. It's used in different parts of the world, and you will just see it everywhere. If you go to a bookstore with a Bible section, you'll just see a big area usually dedicated to the NIV. Even when I go to my local Walmart, I will see the King James Version and the New King James Version. And what's next to that? The NIV. The NIV is so popular and it is everywhere. It also has its own unique editions, just like the CSB has some unique editions. The NIV has some unique editions that are exclusive to its translation, and it's available in many popular editions that people know and love as well. It's also available in some modified versions like the New International Reader's Version, which is a more simplified version of the New International Version. So the NIV is ubiquitous, it's available all over the place, and it's available in many different formats, probably far outdoing a translation like the CSB in its availability and variety. Number 3, another great thing going for the NIV is that it is seen as more evangelically universal. And so what I mean by this is that the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible that I'm comparing here, tends to be tied in people's minds to the Southern Baptists, being published by Holman Publishers and distributed by Lifeway. whereas the New International Version is produced by Biblica, which was formerly known as the International Bible Society. So I just feel like even though they both were produced in terms of their translation by a team of translators from various different denominations, that's also true for the CSB. Still, in people's minds, they tend to tie it with its publisher, its distributor, and the Southern Baptist Convention, whereas the NIV is just seen as more broadly evangelical. Number 4, the NIV is better than the CSB in that I would say if you look at translations and you see that chart of literal on one side and more of a paraphrase on the other side, and then kind of in between you have thought for thought, the NIV is really in a sweet spot there. The CSB kind of gets on that literal side, and in practice, when people actually use a translation, if it gets too literal, it can be hard for people to understand. And the NIV just seems to get this balance of being both literal, but also being really understandable to many people that are out there. It doesn't go too far with the thought for thought thing. It really tries to be accurate to the original language. However, it is not bound in any way to being literal. And so when you read the NIV, it really reads so well in English. And I think that's another reason it's very popular. It really does speak to us as English readers and speakers. So the NIV is really in a good sweet spot between literal and thought for thought translation. And number 5, the reason why the NIV is better is the NIV has stood the test of time. The CSB has only been out really for a few years in its present state, but the NIV has been around since the late 70s and has been doing well from the beginning. And so the NIV clearly for over 40 years has stood the test of time in the evangelical Christian world. It's had a lot of influence. It's been very popular and accepted among Christians. In reality, if you look at best-selling translations, you will see that the New International Version is at the top here. The Christian Standard Bible, and this is from 2019, is number 6. And the NIV has been number 1 for quite a long time now. If we just look at 2014, you'll see that the New International Version is at the top of the bestseller list there in 2014. But even going back to the first quarter of 2009, the top of the bestseller list is the New International Version. So for a long time, the New International Version has been a bestseller and it has stood the test of time. I would actually argue that when you think of the King James Version, it wasn't universally accepted right away. Not everybody liked it at the beginning. But because the King James Version was really this version that appealed to different groups in Christianity, it was just so broadly appealing and universally accepted, the King James Version came to be the number 1 translation for hundreds of years. And the New International Version is really kind of on track to do that. The other translations that are out there are kind of vying for second place, and the New International Version is on top. So if you had to pick a translation that you would say really represents the broad spectrum of evangelical Christianity, you would have to say that seems to be the New International Version. It's been used for a long time and it has stood the test of time. So there you go. Those are my reasons and thoughts on why the New International Version is better than the Christian Standard Bible. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below this video. And as always, thank you so much for listening to my thoughts, brought to you from a Frisch perspective.